Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing team of Gabe and Connor of the Not That Bad podcast. How you doing today, guys?
Excellent. Thank you for having us on.
No,
Yes.
This is truly an honor for me to have you guys here. So, before we talk about why you gentlemen are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Gabe is a filmmaker and contributor to publications. You might have heard of these little guys like Fangoria, Polygon, Dread Central, Screen Rant. Never heard of him. But he's also the writer and director of The Curse of Professor Zardonicus. Am I saying that right?
Zardonicus. Oh, you were so
Zardonicus.
close. You got closer than most people.
Fuck it up too. I was like, oh, hey, how do I pronounce your last name? And I didn't ask that one, and I knew I was going to fuck it up. But
there's
that
no
is
wrong
available
pronunciation
on TV right now. And I have the links for that down in the description, so make sure you guys are checking that out. So what got you started in filmmaking?
And it's what I've wanted to do since I was a kid, not to sound cliche, but that's literally the only thing I've ever really seriously aspired to. My dad was a film critic, introduced me to movies at a very young age, including the movie that we're going to be talking about later on. And it just fostered from there. It was just like this almost like substitute for a social experience because I did not like hanging out around other kids, and movies became that sort of escape, and they just had that very serious role in my life. And it's like I couldn't really imagine not devoting my energy to that. So I've just always wanted to be a filmmaker in some form or fashion. And then I got serious. I actually started really pursuing it as a career towards the end of college. I went to film school, started making shorts, and I developed a feature-length script that I wrote to be micro budget. I met a team of very passionate and talented individuals who have since become close friends. And I asked, do you guys want to give this a shot and actually make a movie? As little money as we had, we made it for $3,000, which is, it's less than a used car, which is not something that a lot of feature films get made for, but we did it. We're very proud of it, and it's just great to be able to share that movie whatever chance I get, because it represents a real labor of love.
Right. Well, I've said for a long time now that I feel like fan films, indie films, micro budget films, those are really the way to go if you're a horror fan. Like obviously the theatrical stuff, it's great. We love it. But if you want something that's a passion project and made for the love of the genre and the love of film and not out there trying to make $1 million, you need to go with your fan films, your low budget films, micro budget films, and indie horror, because those are the people that are doing it for the right reasons. They're the ones that are doing it because they love the genre and they love their craft so much. If they come out and they make $20 at the end, they're happy as hell. So they're doing it for the love of what they're doing. And we've talked enough about you for a minute, Gabe. I want to talk about you for a second, Connor. You were born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. Boo, Detroit.
Hey, at least you're not a Wisconsinite. We can both agree that we have our rivalries with them. So we're rivals, but a little more friendly than my friends just above us. But
I get that. I'm just saying the Tigers are beating the Cubs right now. But anyway, born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago, grew up a horror. Like taboo was horror was like taboo to you growing up. Like it was kind of like out there. So you mostly grew up watching professional wrestling and sports, and you are the co-host, like we talked about earlier, of the best show with the bad takes on the internet, Not That Bad. And we talked about how these guys have their podcast, and I do have all their platforms down in the description, as well as their social media links and the link to The Curse of Professor Zardonicus. Or is it Donicus?
Almost. Zardonicus.
Damn it, I'll get it right eventually. I'm going to keep doing it until I get it right. So we do have their
links.
That's
how I know if you're a real fan of the movie, if you actually know how to pronounce the name of the movie.
Yeah, so Professor Zardonicus. We have all those links down in the description, guys. So make sure that you're following them on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast, and make sure you're checking out the movie. Because like I said, it's a labor of love. It is available on Tubi right now. But Connor, how did you and Gabe get together to create the podcast?
Yeah, so years ago, while I had a period of time where I was very sick. I didn't really have a job around that time, so I started making YouTube videos. And Gabe and I were in a horror group together. Not going to say the name of it, but it was a Facebook group, and we spent a lot of time in there. And one day he just hit me up. He was like, "Hey, I see you love Rob Zombie's Halloween films. I also love his Halloween films. Let's make a YouTube video about how much we love these." And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So went over to his channel. We talked about it. That was, God, about maybe 5 years ago at this point. And then a couple years later, he gave me an opportunity to come on his podcast again. His podcast at the time was covering a lot of movies, and I believe the first one we may have done was it Starman?
Yeah, I had a podcast that I hosted alone that talked about cult movies, midnight movies,
Yeah.
and I knew that Connor was the biggest John Carpenter fan I knew, and I wanted to talk about Starman, a really underrated one of John Carpenter's films, and I brought him on to talk about it, and just like we hadn't talked in a long time, and the chemistry was still there. I
Yeah.
almost couldn't believe it. It was so much. Uh, I'm not going to say more fun talking to Connor because I had a lot of other nice folks on that podcast too, but it just became
I
clear that
won't
we
be
just had
offended.
this organic chemistry. And, the way we just kept shooting ideas back and forth. Eventually, I had this idea in my head for a podcast, a separate podcast, but I didn't know if I wanted to do it alone. It felt like, I don't know, it didn't feel like the right time until I met Connor again and we started talking about all the movies that we've wanted to defend. Again, we like bonded over our love of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, and those are
Yeah.
some of the most hated movies, at least in the eyes of the horror community. So that just birthed our mission, you could say, to defend hated movies that we love, because there are a lot of them, and Connor and I are, we call ourselves movie attorneys. We like give these contested movies their day in court. We don't always say that they're hidden gems. We don't always say they're masterpieces, but we give them a fair shake at the very least.
Absolutely.
See, and I completely understand that because Ashley and I on Sledgehammer Horror do a segment called In Defense of, where we bring on a guest and they talk about a horror movie that they love that's genuinely not liked in the community. Like we've talked about Halloween Ends, Wrong Turn 2021, Halloween Resurrection.
Oh
We've had
yeah.
all these different movies on here that people, a lot of people don't dig, but we really, really do. Like my very first episode was Ashley wouldn't do it with me because she hates the movie. But me and Josh Eppard, the drummer from Coheed and Cambria, we're both really huge fans of
Ooh.
Jason Goes to Hell.
Uh,
And so he came on and we talked about Jason Goes to Hell and how it's my second favorite in that franchise. They
Hell
really
yeah.
took a shot. They went for something different. And I think that maybe if we can get people to, check out the episode, like even that, with Not That Bad, if people can listen to the episode and maybe view the film through a different light, maybe they'll go back and rewatch it and find some positive takes on it that they didn't have before. And I think that's
Yeah.
what's so special about this community is we can all have different opinions and be respectful enough to hear each other out. Until you start talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, then you lost me. But no, it's not that bad. To me, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, the reason I like it so much is because it's essentially a Jason movie wrapped up in Michael Myers. So that's what I like the most about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. But I just think it's amazing that you guys are defending movies and try. I've always said if you're creating art, I hope that there's an audience for it. I would never
Absolutely.
want someone to create something that goes unloved. Like that just seems so cold and dark. And the fact that you guys are out here, giving these films that have been maybe overhated or underappreciated a little bit more of a limelight so people can look at them through a different lens and go, I didn't think about it like that. Let me go and give this a shot again with a fresh take on it, an open mind. And maybe it'll change the way I feel about this film a little bit. So I definitely love and respect what you guys are doing in that aspect.
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, something else that me and Connor really, I think, bonded over is that we became friends at a time when it just felt like online discourse about film was really toxic in general.
Yeah.
This is around the time of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, the David Gordon Green Halloween movies, and it just felt like it was so cool to shit on things for people. It
Yeah.
was so cool to just uh, bring nothing but negativity to the conversation and act like you could do this better, or that you're smarter. And I don't know, it was just like sad to see people enjoy the art of trashing so much to the point where it just felt like actually sticking up for a movie was just getting like really lost in that conversation. So me and him, I think we're pretty positive guys. When we do take shots at movies on our podcast, it's usually more because of the personalities involved deserve it rather than we just think it's cool to shit on movies. Like, we like to shit. I mean, I don't know if we want to name names here, but we've taken shots at some named people on our show. I don't know. Depending on who you are, it might be controversial, but that's a story for a different time. But yeah, I mean, that's
I
what
think
it's
there's
all
only
about.
one movie ever made that I just can't find any positive about, and that's The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. I hate that fucking movie. That's not only the worst horror movie, that's the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. Like, that movie ruined part of my life. Like, I feel like because of that movie, I didn't watch The Exorcist 3 for like 10 years. And then I finally watched The Exorcist 3, and after I watched The Exorcist 3, I hated The Exorcist 2 even more because it drove me away from Exorcist 3. Like, if The Exorcist 2 was a person, every time I'd go to the party, I'd be like, is he going to be there? Because if he is, we're going to fight. Like, that's how, like, every time I saw The Exorcist 2 walking down the street, I would just, like, Macho Man Randy Savage elbow drop him from the top of a car. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, yeah. Like, I'd be going down for it. So,
I mean, hey, I get it. Everybody's got a movie like that. I mean, Gabe and I have talked about it. We both have. We're both like, we came from this. Like, my YouTube channel had a series called 10 Points of Redemption, where I would do like movies that are hated, and I'd tell you 10 reasons why it might not be so hateable. And then Gabe had a series called Not That Bad, which ended up working out perfectly. So when we came together for the show, like, it became clear that we still had our not so favorites. I mean, at one point, Gabe brought Waterworld to the show. We both ended up hating that movie. I shit on Mama every chance I get. That is my Exorcist 2, the movie Mama. That's that's part of the community. What I think, like you said, it's so great about horror is that even though there is that nasty side of it where people could really attack films, there's also no community that gets behind films as much as horror does. It's kind of amazing. So it's got both those sides. We just try to be a part of the side that hopefully likes to prop things up at least a little bit more than they like to tear things down. I hope that's what we accomplish.
Well, and anybody that's a fan of the channel knows that Ashley and I are the same way. We are going to try to find any positive we can for any film that we watch, because that's all I want when I watch a film, is to be entertained. It doesn't have to be, an Oscar-winning performance on every, turn of the page. And like, I don't need all that. Just entertain me, make me smile, make me scared, make me feel something. And I'm pretty much cool with it. So we talked about that, guys. Not That Bad. You can find those links down in the description. So make sure you're following them. Give them some recommendations on movies. Have them try to find 10 points about The Exorcist 2. I fucking triple dog dare you. So, hit them up with some requests on what you would like to see them try to defend in their own little way. So, in order to talk about horror in the podcasting world, or be a filmmaker in that genre, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now, guys, we're going to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And I'll start with you first this time, Gabe. Your first horror movie was?
Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman.
Two of the classic Universal monsters coming together. Got to love it. So what about you, Connor? What was your first horror movie?
My first horror movie was Halloween 5.
Oof.
Which you say that, but that is
defend Rob Zombies.
Halloween 5 was the first episode of Not That Bad.
It's funny.
And it was Connor's idea. To be
clear. I'm joking. Like, it's funny because I'm not a Halloween purist. Halloween came a little later in my life. I started with Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street. So when I first started watching Halloween, I was like, holy shit, this is boring. Like, do something. Like, shoot a harpoon or go in someone's dream. Do something cool. I get a lot of enjoyment out of Halloween 5. I think Halloween 5 is fine. I don't get the big discourse over Halloween 5. I mean, maybe because of how Rachel is in comparison, Cookie Lady. Come on, man. It ain't that bad. So, Gabe, do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen Frankenstein versus the Wolfman?
4 or 5. Yeah.
And you said you watched it with your dad for the first time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So he showed it to me because I had seen this Alvin and the Chipmunks special, their Halloween special, which is Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman. And at some point, I guess my dad is watching it with me or something, and the character Lawrence Talbot comes into the story, and he's like, "Oh, they're actually like doing the Wolfman." I was like, "What are you talking about, Dad?" He's like, "There are movies that were made long before your time called The Wolfman, and this is what they're referencing." And it just like that was like to me like the multiverse being introduced. That just blew my mind and expanded my consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I really asked him to watch this movie and be introduced to this because I wanted to go from the cartoon thing to the real thing. And
Sure.
he decided the best thing to show me was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, two birds with one stone. And that was the gateway drug into monster movies, horror, black and white movies, all of
Mm-hmm.
that.
See, and I'm a huge Universal Monsters fan, so anytime that we get to talk about them, and even when you get to the Hammer side of things, like I thought the Hammer Draculas were fucking beautiful. Like I love like the gothic, aesthetic that comes along with those. And Universal Monsters, without them, we wouldn't have Halloween. These movies all built are, especially a lot of the slashers that we know were built off of the original Universal Monsters. I mean, Friday the 13th Part 6 is a direct homage to Frankenstein, being electrocuted to get brought back to life. Like these movies wouldn't exist without the ones that came before him. So to be able to talk about a film like this is very special to me. So, you started with that. Now I got to go to you for a second, Connor. We're talking about Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, I believe.
Yes, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
Who does he get revenge on? Somebody tell me.
He gets revenge on that river when he's like, doo doo, yeah. So, which scene would you say it was that affected you the most from The Revenge of Michael Myers?
Yeah, it was. It's funny to look back on. Sorry, I had to give any Not That Bad listeners something to drink on for our drinking game. It's funny to look back on Halloween 5. I watched it when I was about 8 or 9 for the first time. I hadn't seen any horror before this. My whole knowledge of horror was just around the Halloween season. I knew monsters were a thing. I knew all that stuff, but and maybe like the Goosebumps kids show. But other than that, I didn't know anything. And so I turned on AMC. And Halloween 5 is on, and I'm like, oh, well, my parents aren't supervising me. Time for me to watch this movie. Later, I found out they knew, but they let me learn that lesson on my own. And the scene that taught me the lesson of maybe I need to watch what I watch a little closer was the laundry chute scene in Halloween 5. For those who haven't seen it, the Halloween 4 and 5 are kind of unique in a way because the slasher is kind of going after a little girl instead of a teenager or college kid or whatever other thing you can substitute in there. At one point, this little girl climbs into a laundry chute and Michael Myers is stabbing his way through it. He's just viscerally trying to get to her. It's got some tension that builds up. It's got some real terror if you're a child the same age as this character. It makes you feel something. And that scene was the one that I remembered when next year came and it was time for me to turn on AMC again to see what was on. When I saw Halloween 4 was on, I remembered that scene instantly and was like, yeah, I'm going to sit and watch both of these now. And to this day, it's stuck with me as a scene that I think stands out in the whole franchise, in my opinion.
Well, what a scary scene, too.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know this or not, but they were using a real knife in that scene. That was not a prop knife. So you have Danielle Harris, this young lady that's just so brave, and she's doing this scene with this guy shoving a real knife through that duct. And it's just like I have little girls, man. Like, what the no, absolutely not. That to me is also, one of the scenes that I really think about when it comes to this movie because it's so terrifying. Besides the end, which I think is just what really the downfall of the Halloween franchise starts at the end of part 5, in my opinion. But that's a story for another day. So we know which scene affected you the most. But Gabriel, I want to talk about Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. What would you say your favorite scene from that film is?
Well, and I thought about that question a lot when you posed it to me before we started recording. Because, I mean, the obvious answer is when Frankenstein and the Wolfman fight, right? I mean, history is made. the concept of a cinematic universe just culminates there. And it was something that probably should be my answer because of its iconic status. But honestly, the scene that really stuck with me and haunted me in a big way was one of the least talked about scene, and a scene that features no monster action. It's the scene where Lawrence Talbot, who's trying to kill himself, that's his hero's journey. He's trying to like end his own life. He goes to this old German village where people in Lederhosen are putting on a festival, and he's so moody about being a werewolf. He's in such a bad mood about it that he stops the parade and tells them, "I don't want to live. Get away. Stop telling me how good life is." And I thought, oh, these movies aren't just scary, they're sad too. That is, whoa. Again, just expanded consciousness.
And his dad just sat at the sideline shaking his head. He's like, when this guy was a young boy, I brought him to the city to see this marching band. He's just running out there telling him to stop. He's going to start some revolution someday, this little emo. That's a great word, emo. We're going to use that for him.
Oh, jeez.
It's amazing to go back and think about, a lot of, especially any iteration of a wolf man or a werewolf, there's always a sadness around it. Whether, American Werewolf, all these different things, there's always this like overwhelming sadness that comes along with the idea or the execution of a wolf man or a werewolf, and unbelievable pain too, and so I could see why someone in that situation would want to end their life, because of how scary and the painfulness that comes along with what they're going through is. So we know what your favorite scene from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is, so I'm going to bounce back here to you for a second, Connor. Halloween 5, as horror fans, we live for the kills. We love the kills. It's something that we all jump on as the kills. What would you say is your I hate saying favorite because that's dark as shit, but
right.
Which kill stuck with you the most from Halloween 5?
I really don't want to be generic with this answer, so I've thought about this a lot, but I kind of have to be, because as a child of the Midwest from Illinois, right? Illinois is misrepresented in every film. It's either everybody in the town is some backwoods country hick, or they are like they talk like they're from New York for some reason. Nobody does Chicago right, I feel like, ever. But knowing that this town is in Illinois, there's farmland in Illinois. It's not just Chicago, and so it was kind of cool in the when they go to the Tower Farm for the party, when Michael Myers uses a scythe to kill somebody. It's not something that you'd really expect to happen, but just this image of this movie that's overall pretty, gothic looking. You finally set this on a farm where the characters aren't like hillbilly laughing and playing a banjo outside, and Michael Myers uses what is effectively a farming tool to murder somebody. I just had a little bit of a Midwest appreciation for that kill on a not so dark level.
I just gotta say, I'm from Detroit, man. Have you seen RoboCop? That's
Absolutely.
How we're represented in everything. Like
Detroit's
Detroit is
not
represented
really
as most even like newer horror films, like It Follows, Barbarian. I'm like, come on, not all of Detroit looks like this. Please help me here. So I definitely get where you're coming from there. So, right now in Hollywood, remakes, requels, sequels, kind of all the rage. Gabe, would you like to see them try to do some type of reiteration of Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman today as a remake?
I just think with the kind of content that the Hollywood system puts out now, I think you would really miss the heart. Like, the thing that separates what I'm talking about, what makes the original so special with that scene, with the inclusion of scenes like that, and the Dark Universe, like that Tom Cruise Mummy remake, or even honestly the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, which everybody adores, but it still lacks this quality I'm talking about, the pathos. And I don't want to see a version of these characters that lacks that heart, and it's a fine line to walk. And I'm not saying I don't want to see people have their own interpretation, but for me as a fan, I just am not interested in experiencing a version of that story that swaps out that tragedy for what, a higher VFX budget, CGI, name actors. You could throw in whoever in there, and unless they're given the material, they're not going to sell it the way that Lon Chaney and not Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi as the Frankenstein monster were able to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's the thing that we've talked about a lot. Like, I've had people tell me they'd like to see American Werewolf in London remade, and I'm like, God, fuck no. No.
Especially not by Max Landis.
Right.
Especially not that.
One of my favorite scenes of any film ever is the werewolf transformation in American Werewolf. You know,
Absolutely.
Jesus Christ, he's ripping his shirt and his hand. Like, that shit is just so fucking great, man. The American Werewolf in Paris, you know, that all the CGI in that pissed me off. So, and that was a sequel. I don't want to even imagine a remake of the classic. So, we are talking about a bigger franchise, Connor, when we're talking about Halloween. You know, your first horror movie was Halloween 5, but what is your favorite movie in the Halloween franchise?
My favorite movie in the Halloween franchise, by the way, just want to say before I say this, that Halloween is a franchise. It's my second favorite film franchise as a whole, behind Star Wars. Star Wars means the world to me. But it's my favorite horror franchise. So I could say something good about every single movie in the franchise. I love pretty much all of them. My favorite is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. It's actually my favorite horror film, believe it or not. But Halloween 5 is in my top 5 of the franchise personally. I do love it a lot, but I couldn't find it in my heart to put it at number 1.
So you say that you could defend any movie in the Halloween franchise. Tell me one good thing about Halloween 6.
The aesthetics, man.
Wrong.
That movie looks beautiful.
No, wrong.
Look, hey, you're preaching to the funny thing is, when I first got into horror communities and I saw the love behind Halloween 6 and the hatred towards Halloween 5, I was dumbfounded. I was like, did none of you love the character of Jamie Lloyd that they introduced in 4 and 5, and how they just inexcusably removed that character from mattering in the entire universe? Like, they just had a baby for nefarious reasons behind that, and then she was killed off.
Like that.
And it's just, I said it. I ran to. We covered Halloween 6 on our show along with Resurrection.
The theatrical cut.
Yes, the theatrical cut specifically. We covered that on our show, and though I did praise the movie, Halloween 6 is at the bottom of my Halloween ranking, very last. I ranted for about 3 minutes about how terrible that decision was. So I get it.
the beginning of Paul Dumbface Rudd. Listen, I love Paul Rudd, but just the faces he makes throughout that movie, like,
insane.
I'm like,
that's what saves the movie. No, that's what saves the movie.
It does make it fun. I laugh it off now, but I get it. That's a tough one.
Look, me and Connor are very different when it comes to the Halloween franchise. I don't take these movies seriously at all, for the most part, to be quite honest, except for Rob Zombie's entries. I mean, even that original movie, I mean, I sympathize with what you said. You know, I'm not going to call it boring, but it's uneventful. How about that?
I'm not going to call it boring, but I'm going to, what's a synonym for boring? Oh, God.
I just love how it's like the big part of Halloween is like,
you know,
look, there's a guy. He stepped out from a bush. What'd you say? Oh my God, that guy's gone. You know, it's just like, that to me is Halloween. And again, most of my shit talking about the Halloween franchise is because I've been married to my wife for 18 years. We're high school sweethearts, and it's her favorite franchise. So I got to shit on it a little bit every chance I get. Obviously, like, I love a lot of the Halloween films. I think Halloween 3 is super underrated. I really do like Halloween 4 a lot. Yeah. I think that Halloween 2018 is fucking phenomenal. If we're talking about the actual Michael Myers movies, I would say that 2018 and Halloween H2O are my two favorites in that franchise. Ooh. I think those are both amazing films. Overall, I actually think Halloween 3 is my favorite. Like, I think that movie is so original, so unique.
It's awesome.
There's an argument for that. There's definitely an argument for that. Yeah, and I don't want to I mean, you can hear our full thoughts on these movies. I mean, we've covered 6 of the Halloween movies. We just covered Ends. We did H2O and Resurrection. We did 6. We did 5. And we've talked about Rob Zombie ones, just not on our podcast. We went on the Flopbuster podcast to talk about that. Yeah. So if you want to hear the full thing. I just don't think you need to take these movies as seriously as some people do. I wish people could have the Friday the 13th mindset of, is it dumb? Well, yeah. Jason going to space is objectively a silly thing to do. Does that mean that you can't honestly enjoy watching Jason X? Are you going to deprive yourself of that experience just because it's not logically sound? Come on, let's just take it easy.
Let's all
I
get
think
off
the
our high
big difference,
horses.
and this is just my opinion, but the big difference when it comes to the enjoyment of a Friday the 13th film versus the enjoyment of a Halloween film, Halloween always tries to tie their movies together. And besides, Friday 4, 5, and 6, all of them are pretty much just standalone films. Like they don't have to be in the same timeline or in the same universe, even. Where in Halloween, they try to make you like 1 and 2 are connected, 4, 5, and 6 are connected. H2O and Resurrection are connected. Rob Zombies are connected, and then the new DGG trilogy is all connected. Like they have to be in that connection, and I think that really throws fans off when you have like, oh, you got this timeline, then this timeline, then this timeline, then this timeline, and then in Friday the 13th, it's just like, oh, watch the fucking movie. Like it's just a movie. It doesn't have to do with anything else. Just with the exception of 4, 5, and 6. You could make an argument that every single one of them is its own standalone film, and that's what I love about Friday the 13th. I don't have to go in. I could go in and watch Friday the 13th Part 1 and then go watch Friday the 13th Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell, and not have to have watched any in the middle to understand either one of those films. And that's what I love about the Friday the 13th franchise.
Friday the 13th as a brand, as a series of movies, is liberated from respectability. It has escaped the shackles of credibility and logic and pandering to those film snobs who want their movies to be coherent and make some kind of sense. I mean, that's just a cheeky way of saying I like movies that wear their intentions on their sleeves and don't mind being what they are. And I think the Halloween sequels are like chasing this reverence that like really makes them stray from the pretty base elements of those storylines. I mean, you start getting into like cult territory, and Michael starts possessing other people and passing on his evil. It's just, I mean, and I enjoy those movies, but that's why people take them so seriously.
Right. Well, the last thing I'll say about that is I've always felt like Friday the 13th is the Legend of Zelda of horror movies. They don't have to connect. They don't have to all make sense. They just exist. That's it. So, Connor, you actually got out of this next question because you already told me the answer. But Gabe, I do need a solid answer from you. So we talked about your first horror movie and what that means to you. But now my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Gabriel? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Ghostface is gonna kill me for this one for sure. But I gotta stick with my co-host here. I can't abandon him. And this is actually something we're on record for having said. We went on a podcast to talk about our favorite horror movie, and our favorite horror movie was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I don't want to like take up the whole time of this podcast to inundate you with my love for that movie, from the aesthetics to the psychology to the brutality to the artistry. I'm a big fan of like vulgar auteurism, and there's nobody more crass and more skilled in their craftsmanship than Rob Zombie. And I just think his whole aesthetic culminates there. And is it literally my favorite horror movie? Is that when I'm going to go to the pearly gates and admit as my favorite horror movie? I hope so. I hope I can stick to my guns on that and not be, pressured by the mob. I'm not catering to the mob today, guys. We're speaking the truth, and the truth is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is my favorite horror movie.
I love how you're like, go to the pearly gates, like you're gonna be up there, and Michael's gonna be like, "What was your favorite horror movie?" God's gonna be like, "Don't let him fucking say it.
Don't say it.
Get the elevator ready for this motherfucker."
Hey, I'll just say Halloween 2, and I just won't say which one.
Yeah, that'll get you away with it. Yeah.
Halloween 2, which one? I didn't hear that. Let him in. So I've had an amazing time, guys, talking to you about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie. and what you guys do over at the podcast as well. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. Since you didn't get it to answer last time, Connor, because I already knew the answer, I'll start with you. So we're going to start with Halloween 5. And what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not judging it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Connor, what would your ranking of Halloween 5 be?
You know, I was gonna stick with the ranking that I gave the movie, which is way higher than I think anybody in their right mind would give it. But I'm actually gonna go a little bit higher here because it's how it affected me. I'm gonna say it gets a 5 out of 5 because when I saw Star Wars, I was changed. I knew I loved movies. But when I saw Halloween 5, I knew I wanted to get involved with film. And that was
Sure.
the first time that it really crossed my mind. You know, I went through everything else that a kid does. I want to be a chef, a policeman, a firefighter, whatever else anybody wants to be. And that was the moment when I saw that and I realized in my head, something clicked. Like, this affected me. This wasn't just making me feel good. This was making me feel good and scared and sad and excited. So yeah, it gave perfect 5 out of 5. It truly did change my life for the better from that moment forward.
And that's what I love about these movies is we can watch a movie that we know critically is not a 5 skull movie, but the way that it made us feel the first time we watched it, it changed the trajectory of our lives. And if you hadn't
Yeah.
watched AMC's Fear Fest, you may not be sitting here with me today, and it
Yeah.
completely changed your trajectory. So what about you, Gabe? What would you give Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman?
So I had already known that I loved movies by the time I saw this, but it introduced me to a new world, a new genre that would become one of the staples of my personality, much to the chagrin of my friends and family. And growing up, it wasn't my favorite of the Universal monster movies, and it was more of a gateway drug, if anything. Although it's remained something of a guilty pleasure because it kind of went from that era of being like the Bride of Frankenstein, the original Wolfman, like these are prestigious movies, and they started to get a little schlockier, a little, they started to head in that direction. But the short answer is I give it 4 skulls because it pointed me in the direction of a whole world that I would fall in love with and has come to define my taste in an immeasurable way. Even though it wasn't the one experience that literally changed my life forever, I can't imagine my life without it.
Sure. See, and that's what I love again about these movies is like we can go back and I don't remember my first comedy, my first drama, my first action flick. I remember House 1986. Like I remember that fucking movie, Ding Dong, You're Dead. Trust me, bro. I remember that shit. So I've had an amazing time with you guys. And I want to remind everybody all their social media links as well as their podcast links are all down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the podcast, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and following these guys on social media so you can stay up to date on everything they have coming up for us in the future as well. Guys, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are down in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.